Greenhouse warming theory is rapidly becoming the most expensive mistake ever made in the history of science. Video 16, how can political leaders be aware of and utilize the best science available? Scientists do not and should not make public policy, but their advice is critical for rational decision-making based on our best scientific estimates of reality. In the United States, as in most developed countries, there is an extensive advisory system linking scientists with policymakers. A science advisor to the president was first appointed in 1941, who leads the Office of Science and Technology Policy, created by Congress in 1976, and the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, or its predecessors, utilized heavily, especially for national defense, by all presidents except Nixon, Reagan, George W. Bush, and Trump. There are a wide variety of standing and ad hoc government advisory committees regulated under the 1972 Federal Advisory Committee Act. In organizations such as the Environmental Protection Agency, charged with the responsibility to issue and enforce regulations, there are formal procedures for integrating scientific advice into regulatory decisions. The Congressional Research Service provides nonpartisan evaluation of scientific and other issues requested by members of Congress, their committees, and staff. The National Academy of Sciences was established in 1863 by an act of Congress. Today, it involves more than 6,000 experts on hundreds of study committees, issuing objective reports based on the scientific method concerning some of society's most pressing issues involving science. Scientists are elected by their peers to the membership. Nearly 500 members of the NAS have won Nobel Prizes. Most NAS reports are requested and paid for by government agencies. Numerous scientific professional societies issue position statements on main issues such as climate change. They also issue fact sheets and encourage their members to communicate with their political representatives. Since 1945, hundreds of organizations known as think tanks have been created to develop and distribute reports on critical policy issues. Most of these organizations work hard to be engaged effectively in Washington politics. Each tends to have an ideological or political agenda. These political agendas have led to what many call the war on science, described in several excellent books. Social scientists have observed that most people have an approach to life and to politics that falls on a broad spectrum from conservative to liberal. Conservatives tend to resist change. They support political and social stability. They tend to have a deep human desire to manage uncertainty and fear. They tend to be uncomfortable with ambiguity and uncertainty. They tend to be more closed, fixed, and certain in their views. They tend to err toward the black and white worldview. They value firm beliefs. They often don't value compromise and typically are unwilling to bend. They often rationalize inequity as being okay. They may be resistant to equality because they distrust people not like themselves. They tend to have a strong sense of loyalty and willingness to sacrifice for a group. They tend to be obedient and respectful of authority. In difficult times, conservatives value authoritarian leadership. They tend to value structure in their lives. They often have a sense of needing to preserve purity and sanctity. They preach fiscal responsibility and the free market. Liberals, on the other hand, often see a need for change, for fairness, for inclusiveness, for understanding, for equity of opportunity. They tend to be more open, flexible, curious, nuanced. They tend to value compromise and are willing to bend. They tend to have much less need for closure than conservatives. They tend to err towards the shades of gray worldview. Liberals often have more need for cognition. They typically feel more need to provide care and to protect from harm. They tend to have a strong sense of what is just and fair. They tend to value being experimental, taking risks in one's ways of living and one's choices, and wanting to sample variety across the range of life's experiences. What is surprising is that a number of studies are beginning to link political orientation with biology of the brain. On average, political conservatives have a larger right amygdala, a key part of the more primitive core of our brain that plays the primary role in our emotional responses to threats and stimuli that evoke fear. Political liberals, on the other hand, tend to have more gray matter in their anterior cingulated cortex, a part of the frontal lobe involved in conflict monitoring, detecting mistakes and errors. Arch conservatives and arch liberals are two very different kinds of people who approach life in very different ways. Scientists estimate that at least 50% of our tendency to be liberal or conservative is based on our genes. We are born with it. Liberals tend to value objective, well-reasoned scientific input, while conservatives often want to disparage scientific input, especially if it does not agree with their political position. Conservatives tend to be Republican, liberals tend to be Democrats. Both approaches to life provide certain benefits and have certain drawbacks. Government tends to work best when these approaches work together from the center. Unfortunately, over the past few decades, Republican leadership has moved far to the right, to the arch-conservative point of view. Unfortunately, at the same time, and perhaps because of rapid growth in communications and the number of media channels, there has been a major increase in the use of propaganda and fake news in deliberate attempts to influence an audience to believe false realities in order to push a particular political agenda. This is where science becomes especially important. We need to base political decisions on an objective evaluation of reality. The scientific method provides the most objective way to estimate reality objectively. At the same time, science is not perfect, and scientists need some humility in recognizing that even when they have extensive consensus, they may not have it right. Jeffersonian democracy is founded on the assumption that voters will be informed about the issues. Deliberate misinformation is a major threat to democracy as we know it. Today, political campaigns are more about getting your political base to go out and vote than they are about specific issues. The future of democracy depends on how much value we put on truth, on objective efforts to comprehend and react to reality. First, we need to come together to agree on objective evaluations of reality. Then we can debate the conservative and liberal approaches to deciding how to best deal with our mutually perceived reality. Many conservative commentators like to postulate conspiracy theories, how scientists are trying to take over government, economies, and such. Many scientists point out that many of these commentators are receiving money from industries that benefit from ignoring science, or rich people who want to promote their own opinions. Ad hominem attacks simply raise the heat of battle, making it more difficult to work together. We have one world with a marvelous diversity of human beings. We all have much to learn in our rapidly evolving world. We will all live happier and healthier if we work together to deal with reality. We will all live happier and healthier if we utilize the scientific method to make rational decisions. But we also need to be humble over the reality that science is not always right. Let's all work together evaluating reality and then discuss civilly the merits of liberal and conservative solutions. Thank you very much for listening.